Now, one thing that's never touched by the advanced is the publishing royalties. Now, as a writer, if an artist is a writer or if a producer is a writer, well, producers are always writers, but you get paid separately than as an artist. Meaning, a producer gets paid for his performance on the CD, which is his royalty, and then the producer also gets paid for his writing on the CD, which is based upon his publishing. Now, like for example, the best way to make that understandable is to say that an artist doesn't have to be a songwriter. An artist can perform someone else's song, which means an artist can get their artist royalty, but not necessarily the publishing royalty. Whereas the producer is more often than not the person who actually did the production, but it's not necessarily the case. Because, for example, I have a friend, he's a producer, but he produces rock bands. And he doesn't actually write music, he just tells them how to make the record sound. So he gets a producer royalty, but he doesn't get a publishing check. Now again, publishing checks are based upon your mechanical royalties. Now the federal government says that 8 cents per song, per copy made, are to be designated to songwriters. So that when a CD is sold, there's X amount of dollars that have to get paid out in performances, and there's X amount of dollars that have to get paid out in publishing. Those are completely unrelated. So a producer who doesn't use samples, for example, gets his performance royalty as well as half, in theory, unless there's some kind of other agreement, and there's no samples, half of the publishing for that particular song. So if he didn't write any lyrics, and if that means that every song on a CD, a producer, if he hasn't used any samples and made all the music himself, would be entitled to 4 cents per song, per CD. So really you're talking about a total, say if it's only 10 songs on a CD, just round numbers, you're talking about 40 cents per CD. You get an album that sells 100,000 copies, you get an album that sells 1 million copies. So again, that's just the publishing, and that's not based upon the actual performance royalties, and that's not subject to being recouped. You get your performance royalty, and then you also get publishing in several different forms. The main form is mechanical royalties, which is based upon the album sales. We discussed that, which is 4 cents. That roughly depends on this whole situation, but the mechanical royalties are based upon actual album sales. You also have synchronization licenses. That's when you see a song in a movie, video games these days, television shows. Songwriters get money for that as well. And if you're the performer, you probably get a good check. You get a different check. The master use license fee. The master use, like whenever you see a song in a movie, there's a master use fee, meaning they have to pay the record company for the right to use that particular song, and the record company pays the artist and the producer. Then there's also the synchronization license, which is based upon who wrote the song, meaning the musicians or producer and the lyricist. Also, so we said sync licensing, we said mechanical. There's print. Print is you don't see much of it these days, but basically if you go to a record store, go to Tower, they have books of music where you can just basically see all the notes. If you want to play the music as a professional, that's usually like 10 cents a copy. I think the rule of thumb is. And the other way is through public performance royalties. Public performance royalties can possibly be the biggest way. What that is when you make money from having your songs on the radio, elevators, restaurants, clubs. They all have to pay a fee to one of the nonprofit organizations, ASCAP, BMI, or CSAC, the 3 majors in the United States. These organizations go around and they collect the money. They divide it up based upon a formula that they've come up with, and they pay people according to the number of spins you get on the radio.
Does producing songs for commercials fall under one of those areas?
Synchronization.
Synchronization.
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, so with that, they don't receive like an upfront check for that. They just
yes, you get paid up front.
Okay.
Yes. They have to pay you before Like you're not going to walk into a movie theater and see your song on a screen or turn on television. This song is on television without somebody paying you first, because basically they can get sued for infringing on your copyright and copyright infringement. Fortunately, the government makes it a big bad offense, so the copyright holders can get significantly paid for people stealing their copyrights.